Q3 GDP data is out and the Indian economy is outperforming. We have seen Q3 GDP data come in at 8.4%. We have seen Q2 GDP data being revised upwards to 8.1%. We've also seen FY24 GDP growth estimates raised to 7.6%. That is significant. Manufacturing, construction sectors really outperforming. Now, economists saying that, look, private expenditure will pick up. Going forward, interest rate cuts will happen. And of course, they are also saying that, look, the farm sector remains disappointing. So, to decode all of this, we're joined by Mitali Nikore, Senior Economist. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us to really decode the economy's performance and what, to your mind, is really the key factor. Because remember, we were speaking to analysts through the day, and NDTV was listening to analysts, and they were saying that, look, the range this time is expected between 6.4% to roughly 6.7, 6.9, some even saying as much as 7%. So, what, to your mind, really is the reason for the economy outperforming so significantly?
So first of all, thanks a lot, Sakshi, for having me. It's always a pleasure. And I think today it's a classic case of us. I think all the economists, including myself, we thought that, it will be between 6 to 7%. But what we didn't realize was the ebullience of the consumer sentiment. The way the consumer sentiment has rebounded in the quarterly data. See, I'm not saying this in the annual data. In the annual data, definitely there is a different trend, and I'll come to it. But in the quarterly data, the private consumption as well as the government spending, which is the government consumption, all of that coming together has created a much faster, sort of rebound in this quarter as compared to, what our estimates were suggesting. So that's the first thing. Now, when we look at the annual data, there we see a slightly different picture. In the annual data, of course, consumer sentiment is, also showing up. It's showing about a 3 to 4% increase, private final consumption. But the hero of the story is really private investment. The gross capital formation has increased by 10%. And when we read this along with the increase in the manufacturing sector of 8.8% and construction sector of 10%, it's showing a very interesting story of a year-long private capital-led consumption growth, you know. And that shows you that it's not only, India is no longer just a consumption-driven economy, but an economy where private investment is also coming in. And not only
Right.
from the government sector, but from the private sector.
Right. And we have seen a lot of private investment come in for the infrastructure space as well. But going forward, where do you think investments need to be focused on? Capital expenditure needs to be focused on, such that this growth momentum really that is showcasing that the Indian economy is resilient and performing exceedingly well can continue.
Right. So, Sakshi, we have a concept in economics called crowding in, right? And it is the government's role to crowd in private investments. And the production linked incentive scheme seems to be doing exactly that, right? The production linked incentive scheme is giving the subsidies in the priority sectors so that foreign investments and national domestic investments can come in from the private sector and invest over the long term in these priority sectors. Going forward, we need to start seeing the government investment increase even more. The direction is already correct, but we need to see the quantum go up by leaps and bounds in the logistics sector under the PM Gati Shakti mission. We need to see more and more investments in climate resilient infrastructure. That's one area I feel like we have started to see some green shoots there in terms of, say, the solar rooftop program that was announced during the budget. But we need to see much more of that, technology transfer, which is coming from, outside to here in green sectors. And over and above this, we should remember that in the budget this year, the overall capital expenditure was set at 3.4% of GDP. And there's a direct, sort of impact which is happening across ministries, where there's an encouragement, and all the ministries are being asked to move to capital expenditure as opposed to revenue expenditure. And I think this is the right direction for us to be taking to crowd in private investment.
Right. Lastly, Mitali, there are concerns about the farm sector and that performance. So, going forward, how do you think we can look at that such that, yes, the economy can continue to grow in all areas, really? Your thoughts on that?
So I think, Sakshi, we need to change our mindset towards the farm sector and start investing a lot more in agriculture related infrastructure. Whether it's agri logistics and warehousing, whether it's irrigation infrastructure, and irrigation infrastructure powered by rainwater harvesting, powered by circular economic water usage practices. Solar farming has now become a completely new practice where under large solar panels you are doing actual farming, powered by that lighting. So we need to see innovation of that kind in our farm sector going forward. We also need investments in skill training for the farmers, because they need to be able to focus on crop diversification. So I think for the farm sector we need a large strategy, a long term strategy which is focused on infrastructure and reskilling.
Absolutely. So, really, a fresh strategy altogether, focus on innovation and investments in more ways than one going forward. Thank you so much for decoding and sharing your thoughts with us on the GDP data.
Thank you.